Hello everyone and welcome to another planty video. I am Jess if you are new here, and I make planty videos here. So today I am wanting to talk all about vining plants, mostly sort of Pothos, Philodendron and Scindapsus. These I all put under the same sort of umbrella. They all need the same sort of care. So I've put them all together. Some people will do things differently with different ones, but for me, they all need the same sort of care and they're all very similar in their needs. So I'm putting them under all the same umbrella. So I'm going to start with lighting. So with the lighting, I always go for bright indirect light. Most of them do, all of them need bright indirect light to do well and thrive. They will do, Pothos, mostly golden pothos will do okay in darker areas, but I wouldn't really suggest putting them there. They're good plants if you need a filler and you just want something there, but expect for it to not grow that much or have little growth or the leaves to be really small, that sort of thing. They won't thrive in low light, which is mostly, it's like all plants, no plants will thrive in low light. So yeah, Pothos and Philodendron and Scindapsus all need sort of bright indirect light. Some I would recommend giving brighter than others, like my Marble Queen Pothos here. She is a variegated. With like most variegated plants, they will need a bit more light if you want the variegation to be good. In my old house, it was in a darker area for some point, so the variegation started to revert. I'll insert a clip of a close-up of it and I'll show you the difference, but it's now putting out much whiter leaves because it's in a much better lighting situation. So this will show you the difference that you could get in lighting, and it does make a difference, the lighting you give these plants. So from lighting, I am going to go on to watering. So watering, I always let mine completely dry out to the point that they're giving me visual signs that they are thirsty. So like the leaves curling, or when you touch the leaves, they're papery thin. They don't like to be overwatered, and mine actually do really well in underwatering. So I will completely let mine just dry out to the point where it's bone dry and the leaves curling, and then even then I might leave it a couple of days when I notice, and then I'll do it. But then I will soak it all the way through, making sure that all of that soil is completely soaked through, and then just let it drain out and then leave it. There's not a time scale with any plants. There's no exact time scale of how long you should water your plants or leave them for. Like, say, some people say I'll leave it 2 weeks, but it depends on your circumstances, depends on your environment, how warm it is at that time. Mine in the summer need a lot more water than they do in the winter. So it completely depends on your environment, your house, where you are in the world, that sort of thing. But yeah, it's always best to just let them completely dry out. I always go by the motto, underwatering is always better than overwatering. If you overwater a plant, it's very hard to bring it back. If you underwater a plant, 9 times out of 10, you'll catch it in time and, you know, it will come back thriving. So with watering, that's the motto I go by. Underwatering is better than overwatering. So soil. The soil I use is a very chunky mix. I'm going to be doing a video on my soil mix. It might go out before this video, I'm not sure. So if it is, I will put a link in the description, so go check that out. But a brief overview of it, it's just very chunky. So I put just soil mix, and then I will put charcoal in there, I will put perlite, and I will put orchid bark. It just makes sure that the soil isn't retaining too much water. It's got enough drainage in there. the roots aren't compact, so it gets enough oxygen in there, all of that jazz. So I think it's always best to have a very chunky mix. A lot of the time when I buy plants, I always try and change that mix, because 9 times out of 10 they're not chunky and you'll end up getting root rot. I found that out. My video from a few weeks ago, my root rot video, I left my my Scindapsus pictus in its original soil too long, and unfortunately it did get root rot, and it is recovering from that now. And I think I caught it just in time. We will see. But yeah, just if the soil mix is good from the nursery, then leave it. But 9 times out of 10, they're just too dense for it and holds too much water for too long, and it will rot the roots. So fertilising. These plants do like fertilising. In the summer months, I will fertilise almost every single watering. It might be a little more diluted than it says in the bottle, but most of the time I do. I use a natural fertiliser. I use liquid gold leaf. I will also leave a link in the description so you can go check that out. I really recommend it. I use that, and I'll use it on almost every single watering through from spring till summer. Winter, if the plant's still growing, I might give it a little bit of fertiliser every month or couple of months, just because it's growing, it's obviously needing it. If the plant's dormant and it's not growing, it obviously doesn't need that fertiliser during the winter months, so I don't bother. It just depends on plant to plant, but all of my Pothos, Philodendron and Scindapsus, they all grow throughout winter. They're quite fast growing plants all in all, so I usually fertilise them, yeah, through the winter months as well, just very diluted and just not as often, probably once a month, every 2 months. So repotting these plants. I try and repot them when I get them, obviously if the soil mix isn't great. But I found that they quite like being pot bound and root bound. I leave mine a little bit longer than usual because they just seem to like it. I mean, my Marble Queen Pothos up here, she was repotted like 1.5 years ago, and she is like this summer is just throwing leaves out, and it obviously she doesn't need repotting because she's not struggling at all, so I'm leaving her. She seems to like being root bound, and it's the same with all the others. I just leave them, and then maybe next summer I might repot her. But it just depends on plant to plant. If you can see your plant is struggling, repot it. But if not, if it's thriving and still growing, you can just leave it until it's to the point where it really needs repotting. So pruning. I prune mine a lot because they are such fast growers. I've got different propagating. I always propagate them because pruning them, you may as well get another plant out of it, and you can either keep them for yourself or, you know, share them with friends and family, sell them. So I always just, if I'm pruning it back, propagate it as well. There are lots of different methods to propagating. I have always done sort of either soil or water, mostly water, just because I'm nosy. I like to see when the roots are growing and just like to see how it's going. But most recently, I have this summer have been really into sphagnum moss and perlite, and they are now my favourite kinds of propagating. So first off is water propagating. So all you do, I will insert a clip now just to show you where to cut and things like that. So once you have taken your cuttings, I'm not taking any cuttings today because this summer I really want my plants to like grow really long. Or grow really high up the moss poles, and none of them need pruning back. So yeah, that was just a bit of an overview of like how you do it and that sort of thing. So water propagating, all you need to do when you've taken your cuttings, I leave them for a couple of hours just for these ends to callus over, because that will help prevent the cuttings rotting in the water or whichever medium you're propagating in. And then you just simply pop them up in the water, and it's as simple as that. Then you leave them. You can then, you can then change out the water. I do not do it as much as I should, but I recommend like a couple of times a week if you can. But sometimes I'll leave it for weeks and maybe just if it needs it, top up the water. But yeah, if you can, try and do it more often than not, just to make sure the water's got all that oxygen, nutrients and stuff in it. But yeah, so I just have loads of little propagation vessels and I just stick them in here and leave them. They like to be in brighter lighting and maybe warmth. They do like warm areas, and it will help them to root quicker and faster and get that really good root system that you really want in your cuttings. So I'll show you, just because the water propagation is easier to show you like the roots opposed to Stagnum and Perlite. So this is what they'll look like. I've got multiple cuttings in here. I always recommend, don't just cut a vine, take multiple cuttings of that vine, and then you can put them all up together and you'll get a really bushy plant. So these are almost ready to be potted up. I'm probably going to leave them a few more weeks. These have been in here for quite a while now. Some root faster than others. This is the Philodendron Brazil, and Philodendron and Scindapsus I found take longer. Pothos really fast to propagate. So yeah, you then just you just pop them up and then they will start to show growth. With water propagating, and same with the Perlite and the Stagnum, I will also add a bit of liquid gold leaf on there. It's a very diluted form, but it just ensures that your cuttings are getting all those nutrients in there. I wouldn't recommend it for chemical fertilizers because it will burn the roots, it's too much. Whereas liquid gold leaf is a natural fertilizer, so it is all good and it's very diluted. Again, I would have put the link in the description. So Perlite is the most recent one I've been trying out and I love it. So this is also a Philodendron Brazil. I wanted to try it in water and in here just to see how it took, and this is doing so well. So with Perlite, you literally get your Perlite, put it in a colander or a sieve, you rinse it out, and then you will leave it to drain out for a little bit and just put it in a little vessel. I like glass so you can see through the roots and see what's happening because I am nosy, but you can just do it in a normal opaque vessel. It's completely up to you. And then you just pop your cuttings in there, and then yeah, you just leave them. Every now and then I've missed it to ensure that the humidity is up in there and it has got water, but just keep an eye on it. But I'll see if I can show you now the roots underneath. This guy has just started rooting. Can you see in here, this root is coming round, and the thing I do struggle with the sort of Perlite and the Stagnum moss is you can't properly see the roots. So there's obviously a lot more in there than you can see, but obviously because it's a solid medium you can't see it until it gets to the edges, which I struggle with because I do like to see what's happening. But yeah, this is also a really easy one. You can reuse the Perlite every time. I just recommend rinsing it out and ensuring it's cleaned completely before reusing it. And the next method of propagation, I use Stagnum moss. So this is a pot of mixture of Micans cuttings. They're really small, Philodendron Micans, which is why I cut them, just because there were such tiny leaves. And then Scindapsus pictus ones, I've just popped them all in the same. But these are doing so well. So with this, again, it's very similar to the Perlite. Get your Stagnum moss, I put it in a bowl of water, soak it all the way through for about 5 minutes, and then you just take it out, you wring it out with your hands, try and get most of the water out, and then you just pop it in one of these vessels and then just pop all your cuttings in there, ensuring that they are coming into the stagnum. And you don't want this to be soaking wet because it will rot the roots, but as long as you've got sort of condensation on the glass, you know that there is airflow in there and moisture. As soon as you can see when the stagnum's getting drier because it will go paler, and that's when I will pop some more water in there. But yeah, it's so easy, you just leave them and they'll just do their thing. It's so good, and I found the roots, just as soon as they start, they just go and they just start going mad in stagnum, which I really love. So in here you can see them all in the bottom here. There are quite a lot of them. It's quite difficult to know with this when to sort of take them out and pop them up, but I'm kind of thinking these are the first ones I've done. Same with the Perlite. The first ones I've done, so I've not actually potted any up yet, so I think I'm going to leave these maybe another week or so and then take them out of the stagnum and see how they're doing. I mean, if the roots have gotten all the way down to the bottom of the jar, I would assume that it's got quite an established root system, but I'm going to give it a few more weeks and then I'll take them out and see how they're doing and then maybe pop them up. We will see. So yeah, that is everything to do with propagating. If anybody's got any, oh no, another one is soil propagating, which I don't do much just because I'm like I said, I'm nosy. I like to see what's going on with the roots, and you know, if that cutting is rotting, you can always cut it back a little bit. But soil propagating I've done with my Pothos and it works really well. It's the same idea. You just take your cuttings, let them callus over, get your potting mix and put it in one of your pots, and then just pop all of your little cuttings in there and they will root. You've got to make sure you're keeping the soil quite moist, and it's the same when you're potting up any of these from water perlite or stagnum moss. With the perlite and stagnum moss, they don't have as much water as when they're just rooting in water, so it's not so bad, but you just got to remember they're going from a water medium when they're coming from a water propagation. So make sure you're keeping the soil moist for the first couple of weeks until they acclimate to the new soil medium, and then slowly start to let it dry out more and more, and then completely. That's how I always do it. And it's the same when you're just soil propagating. When you put it in the soil, make sure you're keeping that water quite make sure you're keeping the soil quite moist, because they don't have any roots yet and they've got to get that water from, they've got to get the moisture from somewhere, so you've got to make sure that the soil is quite moist. And then once they've started rooting, just slowly start to take away and let it dry out slower and slower over a month or so. That's how I always do it. And you can always tell when they're starting to root because you can pull on them and they will resist. So yes, my preferred methods at the moment is stagnum and perlite. It's quite exciting to me because it's new, I've never done it before, but it just seems to work really effectively. So with vining plants like this, it's quite exciting because you've got different ways that they can grow. So they're vining so they can fall, like you can see back here, or you can have them climbing. There are different ways to have them climbing, and it's completely up to you. People do different things and have different styles, but I'll show you how I've got mine. I've got some that are only just starting to climb up. There's only just started, so there's not much to see. So the different methods are moss poles. You can even make your own, which I do have a video on. If you want to check it out, I'll tag it down below. You can buy the ones with the cocoa coir in the like garden centres or nurseries or online, or you can have them climbing up wood. I'm only just experimenting with this, so I'm sure I'll have a video somewhere showing how it's going, but you can have that. At the moment, most of mine are on either my own homemade moss poles which are made from Stagnum or the Cocoa Coir ones that you can buy. I will show you a few examples. So this guy is on my own one, and it is just pipe in the middle and then Stagnum covered in mesh. These I'm not great with because I'm really bad at keeping the Stagnum moist. It is best to keep it moist so then those roots really want to get in there. I'm quite bad at that, which is why I'm experimenting with wood, because I feel like it'd be better for me. But all you do is when you pop them up, you put your pole in the middle and then you attach your vines, you just tie them up onto the pole, and then eventually those aerial roots will get into the Stagnum, and then eventually it'll hold itself up. Benefits of them climbing up are the leaves will get bigger and more mature because they want to climb. They are vining, and in the jungle they will be climbing up trees and vines and things like that, so they want to climb up, and the leaves will eventually get bigger and more mature, which is always amazing. I love that. And then when you have them vining, they are beautiful. I also love that. It just depends where you want them. But the leaves often do get smaller when you have them vining. It's just the way it is. I don't know why, but the leaves will always go a bit smaller, more often than not. But both are beautiful, and it's completely up to you what you want. I mean, most of my plants I'll always buy them vining, and then I want them climbing as well, so I'll take some cuttings and then train them to go up. But yeah, so it's always interesting to see the two different sides and how each one reacts from growing down or growing up. I find that really interesting. But yeah, so that's how I do it, and often I forgot to say this with the propagation earlier, but with propagating, when you propagate them, it encourages it to grow, outgrow from other points, or also you get those leggy ones where there's more stem than there are leaves, and some of them I really like that look. My Scindapsus pictus is like that. It's quite bushy at the top and it goes leggier. I quite like that look, but on other plants you want them really full and bushy, and if you prune them back it will encourage that, and then you can take propagations from the leggy bits and then replant them in the top, and then you'll get an even more big bushier plant, which is always a plus. I love that. So I think that is all for today. I hope this is useful for you. I have a lot of vining plants, when I first started getting them. I was watching so many YouTube videos about like all these different things, and I really hope other people find them helpful, like for beginners, or even if you're not a beginner and you're not that clued up on these sort of plants. I hope this is helpful for you, and yeah, if you like this video, please consider liking, subscribing, commenting, all that sort of thing, and go check out my Instagram. And yeah, so thank you all so much for watching, and I hope you have a fabulous day. So yes, I will see you in the next video. Thanks, bye.